What's up, everyone? Welcome back to part 7 of the Batwing fairing conversion on this '04 Harley Road King. If you're new to the channel, check out parts 1 through 6. You'll get an idea of exactly what's been going on with this bike. For those of you that have been around for the ride, let's continue on. So in the last video, I went through and I installed a lengthened clutch cable, lengthened front brake line, as well as lengthened throttle cables. All of those were +6 over stock. If you remember in the last video, I had a little bit of excess throttle cable. I did go through and I was able to kind of hide that in the front here. I did wrap everything with electrical tape just to make sure that nothing is going to rub. I was able to get the throttle cables to adjust out perfectly. Everything's good to go. I got the brakes bled. That was a pain in the butt, but they definitely, they're bled now. They're working great. And the clutch is all set as well. Nothing is rubbing in the fairing, so that's a good sign. Everything clears without a problem. As well as even on the clutch side, we're good to go there too as well. There's a little hold down that goes on this bolt right here, and when that's in place, it holds everything perfectly out of the way of the bike, so I don't have to worry about anything rubbing. I did go through and fill the transmission. I ended up going with the red line heavy shockproof fluid. I went through after too and I cleaned the bike up really well. Then I proceeded to go and take it for a rip because I just had to try it out. I wanted to try out the bars. The bars are great. I love them. Super comfortable, and they're going to work out just fine. The bike's running great. It's shifting well. Throttle's all good. So we're on to the next thing. The next thing is going to be the stereo. So the stereo is going to need to be mocked into the fairing because I do want to get this thing into paint sooner rather than later. And so that's what we're going to be concentrating on now. Okay, so for everyone that's been following along, this is going to be a little bit of a repeat, but just to reiterate, going to be using a JVC Bluetooth deck. It's a mechless deck, no CD player, so it's lightweight, and you know, obviously CDs aren't really heavily used, especially on a Harley. I'm assuming it would skip rather heavily. That is going to be housed inside of a marine grade flip down tinted enclosure. This is going to be pushing 4 Polk DB 5 1/4s. And what's going to be pushing it is going to be this SoundStream 1200 watt Class D micro amp. Jury is still out on this because I've never used one, but it had good reviews, so we'll give it a shot. Also going to incorporate these flat 4-pin trailer connectors in here to make my harness. This is going to allow me to be able to quickly disconnect this radio for whatever need that I might have for it, whether it be draining the battery in the wintertime or just needing to take the fairing off of the bike. So the only bad part about this fairing is it does sit rather close to these driving lights. There's not a whole lot of clearance there. It's not hitting, but there's not a lot of clearance. So I'm going to have to get creative. In order to take this fairing off, you do have to drop the driving lights in order to get the thing up and out of the way. So that's going to be a little bit of an issue, but again, I don't really foresee myself taking the fairing off all that often, but in the event that I do have to do that, that is going to be the case. I do plan on burying these connectors up underneath here as far as I can. I don't know if I'm going to go on this side of the neck or if I'm going on the other side. We'll figure that out when we get there. I think there's more room on the other side. There's less stuff running down that side, so we might go with that. But first things first, we're going to need to get the fairing off of the bike in order to start mocking up these speakers. I did notice when I did look at them, the grills do fit really, really tightly, and they're kind of large, so I don't want the edge of the grill going over this edge right here. So I'm gonna have to get creative there, and I want them both to just kind of butt up nicely, but we'll cross that bridge again when we get there as well. All right, let's get this fairing off the bike. For those that are curious, so when you buy this fairing, it comes with 2 shields. It comes with your choice of a tinted or a clear shield. These are both just flat plexi type shields, and although they're decent, this one's kind of like a brownish tint. You can't really tell. There's actually plastic on both sides here that you have to peel off so it doesn't get scratched up. They do work. I had it on the other bike, and they're not bad, but I was able to score, if anybody was wondering. This is actually a Harley Shield. I don't know what it came off of. I scored it off a buddy of mine. Came off, I think, a Street Glide, or I'm not 100% sure. But it had the little, little Harley emblem right here. I did have to remove that because it does sit down a little bit lower than it would on a factory Harley fairing. So I'm just going to reattach it when I go to do it. But this was a really nice one. I couldn't pass up the price. So this is what I'm going to be going with. It has that nice, that nice scoop to it. So should work out really, really well. Again, like I said, these do work, but they kind of look a little on the cheap side. So if you're doing this, this is definitely going to be the better. It's going to be the better fit for it and the better finish when it's all done. All right, I'll start by popping these things out of the box. I've already opened them up and inspected them just to make sure they weren't damaged. Get these out. Take a look and see what we got here. These holes come cut fairly decent. I mean, it's just a round hole. They're measured out for the most part, I would say, in the right spot. But there is a little bit of a discrepancy. You can see that it's a little closer on one side than the other. These speakers aren't going to fit dead smack in the middle anyway. I want to try to tailor them to how I want them to fit in the hole. All right. So these need to fit, something like that. Now, like I said, this is definitely going to be a tight fit, because if you look at the way these are going to be, there's not a whole lot of room on either side. I have to kind of figure that out as I go. But you can see here, I'll get you in a little closer so you can get a feel for exactly what I'm talking about. So if you look at the edge of this definitely wants to sit over. So I'm going to have to find the dead smack middle of this so I can kind of, make sure that it's not going to be riding over the edge. And if you see exactly how close these things are, there's like no room at all. So I'm just going to have to kind of play with it a little bit until I figure out exactly where that center point is going to be. But these are going to look pretty sweet. All right, I'm going to get going here, try to get these things centered and drilled. I'm just going to mark my spots, pull the speakers out, drill my 4 holes once I figure out exactly how I want them. Obviously, I don't want the, I don't want the speakers to be sitting crooked, so I want to make sure that everything is 100% straight to the fairing before I go ahead and drill. All right, in retrospect, I wish I had researched these a little bit better and figured out the actual outer grill size, because they do hang over just a touch. I got them centered and lined up so they will look their best, and they're going to be even on these corners here, which is probably the more important part. We are going to be overhanging down here at the bottom by about a 1/16 of an inch maybe, but that's down towards the inside of the bike, and that's, below the bars and everything, so I don't really think you'll see that all that much. I think when I do finally go to, this is a good jumping off point, I did mark the holes and scratched into the gel coat a little bit so I can see where they're going to sit. This will at least get me in the ballpark. When I do the final mount up on these, I'll be able to slot the holes a little because I'm actually going to nut and bolt these to the fairing. I don't trust the little clips that they give you. I don't trust any of the screws. It's a Harley. It's going to rattle. So I'm going to use Nylock, little like M6 bolts with fat washers and everything on the back. So they'll be attached really well. And there's a little bit of play here, so I should be able to kind of work them back and forth, figure out exactly where the best part is when I go to actually put them in. So this right here for mock-up purposes will be fine. I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other side now, and I'm going to go ahead and drill my holes. All right, holes are drilled in what seems to be the correct position for this thing. Like I said, I'll be able to kind of, manipulate the speakers a little bit, move them around when I go to hard mount them in there. And everything's going to get mocked up, obviously, and tested before this thing gets pulled back apart to go to paint. So we'll do that when we get to it. So the next thing is going to be to get this housing to fit this hole. Obviously, the hole's going to need to get chopped out. We got to do a little measuring, figure out exactly how far I'm going to actually have to cut this hole in order to get it to work. So let's check that out now. All right, let's get a look at that housing that I bought for the radio. It's by a company called Scorpion. It's a universal weatherproof marine cover. It's a MCB-I, I believe. Maybe it's a 1. I'm not 100% sure. This, I think I paid like $14 for this thing. It's actually really good quality. The other one that I had on my bike was really nice too, but it was spring-loaded. You would just lift the lid and put it back down. This one's got kind of like a slow open feature, which I kind of dig. It's pretty cool. So if you hit the button, it just opens nice and slowly, which is pretty neat. It's also set up for a DIN style, or you can pop these little brackets out. I don't know a lot of people that still run a shaft style radio, but in case you wanted to, you certainly can. The other neat thing that I noticed about this is, behind these covers is what actually holds this unit to whatever you mount it to. Obviously, if it's in a boat, you're mounting it to the, inside the dash of the boat or whatever. But in this case, we're going to be mounting it to the fairing. So that's where those holes go through to mount this thing. On one side, it's fixed. On the other side, I just found it out just a minute ago, that when you pop this side open, it exposes not only the bolt area, but it also exposes a blank that you can pop out of there and allows you to run a USB plug in there. So if you wanted to run an additional charger, to charge something else, maybe your cell phone, whatever, you could certainly do that. The radio that I'm using already has USB. I might actually consider doing something like this because I do run a USB. I load all my music onto this and I throw that right in the USB so that I don't really wear down the battery on my bike or on my phone playing music off the Bluetooth. So I don't know. I might consider actually doing that. The only problem is I'm not a big fan of, leaving something like that open and having wires dangling while I'm riding. It's just not a good habit to get into. That's when stuff accidentally kind of gets yanked and falls or whatever. So I don't know. We will see. But I might do it just for the accessibility and maybe wire it directly to the battery so that I could charge a phone even if the bike is off. That would probably be kind of a neat thing. And it's hidden away so you don't really see it. All right, so what I need to do in order to get this thing to fit into the fairing, because this is not going to fit that hole that's in the fairing, I'm going to make a couple of measurements here for length and width. I'm going to cut it exact, and if you look at it, when it opens, it does look as if it does not go anything past that actual top line. So I think that's a good mark that I could use to make my cut. So I'm going to get going on that, and we'll see what it looks like when we get it done. All right, I'm sure some people are shaking their head. I'm a little unorthodox, but I have my ways, but it's done now. So what I did was I basically measured this opening. I made sure that it is actually dead smack in the middle, which it is. I found the center point on that, and then I just added the additional length to get to my current measurements that I need. So when I did check this thing again, I looked, and it seems as if I needed a little bit wider on the top and on the sides by a little bit. So it went to 3 3/8 from top to bottom to make clearance for a couple little tabs that have to make their way through there. And then 8 1/4 this way so that the little springs on the side of the mechanism can clear the fairing when you install this piece. So we are at 3 3/8, and we are at 8 1/4. So we're good to go there. I think it's about time to start cutting. Let the fiberglass fly. All right, and that's out. Well, I started out with good intentions. I started off with, just a little mini reciprocating saw, and then I realized that my blade was like toast and it wasn't doing anything. So I got out the big guns and just powered through it. The hole is cut. I'm gonna get this tape off of here and see what kind of a chopped up mess I got going on. I'm sure it's probably not 100% straight. Cut off wheel and fiberglass is never usually a good thing, but we'll see. Let me get the tape off here and put this piece in and see what she looks like. Not too bad. It's a hair on the ugly side, but we'll straighten that all out. All right, let's see how it fits here. All right, looks pretty good. So this thing fits just to the edge all the way around. Man, I couldn't have been any closer. So I really don't like the looks of that white gasket. I may have to do something different with that because that is super ugly. Might tear that right off and make my own gasket out of some black foam or something like that. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let's see what it looks like from the back. All right, here's what we got. Yep, fits pretty much just right all the way around. I'm gonna go ahead and clean all these edges up before I paint anyways. I would go in and just kind of file everything down, smooth it all out. All these rough edges will all be taken care of before it gets some paint. Just because I don't know, I just don't want raw and rough edges. I like to make the thing as finished as possible. So, all right, now that I got that all set, next thing is going to be to find that center point, I think I'm going to pull that gasket right off of there and try to salvage it so I can make another one. I'll use it as a template to make another one. Then I'm going to go ahead and drill my little side holes here and start mounting some stuff up so I can, maybe get the cage in here for the radio so I can start mounting some of this. I got to figure out where the amp is going to go. I'm thinking I kind of like this flat spot right here. It's underneath everything. You don't see it in the nacelle. And I think I could actually drill holes and mount bolts coming up to the bottom to hold the amplifier down. It's really the only straight spot on the back of this fairing. So I think I'm going to get the amp out of the box too and just kind of hold it all up there and see what it all looks like. At this point, I'm going to keep going a little bit more, but at this point I'm going to start mounting some of these things, and I think I'm actually going to set it back on the bike so that I can just kind of have it all being held down in one spot and just kind of work around it and fit everything to the bike. So, all right, get this all cleaned up and get back at you. All right, side note, this is hateful stuff. It didn't want to come off. Man, this stuff is stuck to this thing horribly. I'll get it off the rest of the way. I've been sitting here chopping at it with a razor blade. Luckily, I wasn't able to save the gasket, but I saved this, and I'm going to use this to make my new gasket. If anybody from Scorpion is listening, why? That's my question of the day. Why? Why on a black surround would you choose to use a white gasket? I know boats are mostly white, but if I had a white boat, I would probably search out a white housing. I don't know. I don't know what the thought process. They must have saved like a ton of money by buying white gasket material. I don't know. But anyway, rant over. Start getting some of this stuff mocked up and keep on keeping on. All right, I got the fairing back up here so I can start doing some of the mock-up for this thing. Got the amplifier, cute little bugger. Put it right in here. I think it's going to sit right about like that. The reason why I wanted to do this is because I want to double check to make sure that I'm going to have clearance. And I'm not 100% confident here. All right, with that all the way up, yeah, it's real close. I really hope that's going to work. The radio is definitely going to cover where the crossovers are, which is not a huge deal because before I finalize everything and I have everything completely tied down, I'll go in and I'll set this stereo up. I'll adjust my crossovers for the appropriate settings, and then that'll be covered by the radio, but that's not a big deal. My gains here on the side, this is the important stuff right here. So as long as I have access to that, I should be good. Yeah. All right, I'm going to need to mount the radio inside of this holder and then reset the radio in here so we can see exactly where we're at and figure out something. I'm sure I'll be able to get it to work somehow, but probably not without a little bit of finagling. So let's start finagling. Probably ought to go out and buy a lottery ticket. I don't believe this, but it clears it like by about 1/8 of an inch. So if you hold up on the radio where it's actually going to sit in the fairing, we have about 1/8 of an inch clearance between the amplifier and the deck, which is good. So with that being said, I can't push it any further that way, or it does come in contact with it, but I'm okay with that. It's sitting nice and flat. It'll be good. This is a Class D, so it doesn't really have heat sink, so it shouldn't get overly hot. And the radio is, it's away from it. Little small piece of foam in between the two just to kind of hold it up. And the really good part about it is the amplifier is kind of holding up the deck too, so it's gonna keep it in place. I don't have to worry about the thing moving around too much. So that's pretty awesome. So on to the next thing. I think I'm gonna pull the radio back out of that, get rid of the amplifier off there. I'll make some marks where I'm going to actually have to mount it, and I'm going to hard mount this bracket to the bike, at least get the holes drilled for that. And then I'll go ahead and drill the holes for this so I can mount it. Obviously, I'll drill the holes with this off of here. I don't want to risk accidentally hitting the nacelle and making a mark. So, all right, let's start drilling. All right, so all the holes are drilled. You know that old adage, measure twice, cut once? Well, it applies to drilling too. Got all 4 of these lined up and then realized, oopsie, I was a little off there on that last one. So I did the right thing and drilled another hole right next to it. So it's all good. I just realized I'm going to make an executive decision here, and that's going to become my hole to bring all of the wiring through, because if you look on the other side here, that will drop me right down right there and give me nice direct access to this spot right here to run all my wiring down through here under the nacelle. I was going to use the other side, but there's far more of a gap on this side than there is on the other, and I think it's just going to work a little bit better. I can hide the loom tubing kind of behind this here, zip tie it to it, and you won't see any of that. So, all right. Well, without further ado, I think I'm going to start mounting up some of this stuff and see about mocking the stereo up and get it wired and see what it sounds like. Let's do it. All right, so everything's just kind of sitting in place. I got it fairly bolted down. I didn't realize the amount of nuts that came in the package versus the amount of bolts I bought, so I'm actually short the nuts that I'm going to need for these bolts. So I got each speaker in with 2 right now, just kind of holding it in place. They actually look pretty good. They're not bad. I like the way they look. They're going to sit in there pretty good. Everything is nice and level, looks decent. It'll look a lot better once I put the actual, the remainder of the hardware in there. Radio is just kind of sitting in place there. I haven't put any of the finish trim or anything in. The next thing is going to be to wire this thing so that I can actually hear what it sounds like. I was just going to kind of twist stuff together and halfway do it and just kind of test it off a battery, but I think I'm actually going to pull the bike apart and start wiring it so that I can make these harnesses and have them ready to go, so that when this comes back from paint, it's just like a plug and play kind of thing. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start figuring out what I'm going to need here. Get the tank up, get the seat off, just get everything out of the way and start running all the wiring as if I were putting it in finally, or the finished product. The only thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go ahead and solder any of the connections here. So it does come with some wiring with just some real quick, type push type connections. I think I'm going to do that and leave the speakers kind of loosely hooked up. Maybe just wrap them with a little electrical tape. But when I do finally wire everything in and it's in its forever home, I'm going to go ahead and use a different speaker wire, a little bit thicker, a little bit nicer, and I'm going to go ahead and solder all those connections on. I want to solder the wires directly to the speakers, so it's going to be in there permanently. So when we get to that point, that's when I'll do that. But otherwise, I think I'm going to start drilling some holes and taking some stuff apart and see how this all comes out. Well, let's do it. Alright, so I've gone ahead and made my harnesses real quick. These come as a flat 4-pin harness, but I'm trying to fit it in 1/2-inch loom tubing in certain sections because I want to be able to have a finished off look when I go to put that into the bike. So under where it's going to ride under the tank, I'm not overly worried about it. But what I did do is, because they are like a flat 4-pin together, they wouldn't fit side by side inside the 1/2-inch loom tubing. So I stripped all the wires apart, meaning I just kind of tore them apart from the flat 4-pin and made them all single wires. That enabled me to kind of, place them a little differently. They're kind of like in a series of 4, and I have them all wrapped in the electrical tape. I've kind of remade the harnesses. So these are going to allow me, like I said, to unhook. So I've designated each one. So one mark is going to be for the radio, and then the other one with the 2 marks, that's going to be for the amplifier. This side obviously is going to go up into the fairing. It's rather short. I didn't realize it was as short as it was. I'm going to have to add some extension wires, I'm sure, but I've gone ahead and just kind of preemptively kind of marked what wire is going to go to what, trying to stick with some of the normal colors. The reason why I'm doing this too as well is because I have to make the ground the white, which that works because on a trailer that is the ground anyway. But because if you unhook this and you make this your power, if it should happen to touch anything on the frame, obviously it's gonna end up going and arcing off the frame. So we're gonna make sure that the encased wires are carrying the power, at least the live power that goes back to the battery. So that one will be the ground for that. All right, so I'm gonna go through and try to muscle these harnesses up under the tank, start hooking up some of these to the battery, and then go ahead and hook the other side up to the radio. All right, let's do it. All right, the trimmer line trick strikes again. I was sitting there figuring, like, how am I going to get those things down through there? Because you can only lift the tank up so much without actually disconnecting stuff like this and draining the tank out. I'm like, I really don't want to drain the tank out. So, string trimmer line again to the rescue. Pulled it right through, was able to get it in there. The only issue I think I'm going to have here is I wanted to run... I still, even after I made that harness, I still couldn't fit both of them inside this 1/2-inch loom. So what I did was I made 2 little harnesses, and I'm gonna tuck them like right here. I know that's pretty open and ugly. I think I might try to see if I can't put it somewhere in there, maybe tuck it down in behind it. It's gonna ride through this though. I think I'm gonna take this apart, run it right up through there, but it will disappear up under the nacelle and come up through that hole right there, which is now mounted and ready to go. So that's pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get these wires up through there. Again, I'm just mocking it in place because I can't commit. I can't wire any of this stuff through because then I can't take it back off because the plug's gonna be on the other side of this and all this will be in here. So there's no way to have this permanently affixed just yet. But all in due time. So I'm gonna try to wire this thing up now that I got these things going through here. I'll do the connections for obviously the radio and the amp first. Then I'm gonna run back to this right here and wire these up just kind of temporarily here and see what it all sounds like, and then put the cover on it, play some tunes, see how it sounds, and then take it all apart again. All right, let's get to it. Here is the finished product. Got the harness all made. I lengthened these wires like 20 inches. That's going to give me more than enough. I'm obviously going to have some additional. I'm anticipating cutting most of this back. I just kind of lightly went through and somewhat measured exactly what I'm going to need, but this will be good. So this will be the end that's coming up into the fairing, and these will be able to be wire tied after everything's done, connected up, and joined to this one is going to be for the radio. All right, so I'm going to get busy and finish up these last few right here. I'll get back to you when I got it all finished. And then there were two. All right, so I got both of these harnesses made to hook up to the amplifier as well as the radio. While I was doing that, I also created, very crudely, with the speaker leads that came with the speakers, some extension wires so that I can then attach those to the amplifier. These just were not long enough, so I had to make them a little longer, custom made. Eventually, when I do go to put this in, again, like I said, I'm going to use this wire and just solder it directly to the backs of the speakers. All right, so next thing is going to be to hook these wires up, speaker wires, to the outputs on the amplifier, as well as hook these guys up to the harnesses that go to the radio as well as the amplifier. From there, I'm going to then go to the bike and hook everything up crudely just to the battery. I'm not going to bother running them to the fuse block or any of that good stuff yet. I do that later on. So for right now, I'm just going to tie these ends together, hook them up so I can hear this thing, make sure that everything is working, get everything adjusted the way I want it, and then start tearing this thing apart. All right, let's do it. And we got all kinds of a mess going on here. I got it all kind of wired up, if you want to call it that. I also made sure amp was working, radio is working. I went through, tied everything together really, really quickly, stuck it to the battery, turned it on, and it looks like everything is working just the way it should. So this thing even cranks without the back on, so it sounds pretty good. I don't want to play it too long because I don't want to risk any music copyright infringement, but I'll give you a quick listen. Not bad at all. Very, very happy with this. I can't wait till I actually put the back on, get everything adjusted. That was with the amp at like halfway on the gain, so this thing's got plenty more power to dish out. Super impressed with this little thing. This is amazing. And it's been on for about 5 minutes now. Barely even warm. So that's cool. Yeah, so going to kind of mess around with this thing a little bit more, get it dialed in, and then start taking this thing apart. So I just spent the last few minutes kind of dialing this thing in, messing with the gains a little bit on the amplifier, as well as the crossovers to try to get a little bit more out of these speakers. So far, I am very happy with the performance of that amplifier. It has done everything I hoped it would do. The speakers as well, they're great. For such a small speaker, I can't believe the amount of bass reflex that I'm getting out of these things. And this is with the cover off the back. I can just imagine once I actually go ahead and put everything back together. This is going to be a little bit of on and off kind of tuning. I'm gonna have to keep pulling it back apart, messing with the amp, get it exactly where I want it. But I'm actually starting to drain the battery on the bike, so had to kind of call it quits for right now. So the next step is going to be to tear everything back out of this fairing and get it ready to start doing the body work and the paint. I got a lot of imperfections to fix on this fairing, as well as, once those are done, I'm going to put a couple of coats of 2K primer on it, block it all out, and then put it in the booth and lay a nice vivid black paint job on it so that it matches the rest of the bike. So that'll be in the next video. So if you guys are enjoying seeing this stuff, please do me a favor, like the video, subscribe. I would really appreciate it if people would subscribe, as well as mash that bell for notifications so you know as soon as these videos come out. All right, well, this is going to wrap this one up, and I'll see you guys on the next one.